Hello and welcome to the Green Profit Academy Pros podcast. This show digs into the challenges in growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit. I'm Christeen Era.
And I'm Steve Bousquet. We are the green industry experts in profit, growth, and leadership.
In today's episode, we're going to talk with Jaime Turney of Core Growth Strategies on how to maximize a meeting with your accountant. I love this conversation. It's something that people ask me all the time, like, what should I expect? What does this look like? Or during, consulting calls, it will come up and say, when I ask, hey, what do you talk to about your accountant? And they're like, oh, what am I supposed to talk to, to my accountant? So I want to welcome Jaime back. She has been a guest on our show in the past talking about accounting. And Jaime, thanks for joining us again today.
Happy to be here.
So I want to start off, so those who may not have connected, with you before or listened to the previous episode, I want to get some information from you on what is your background and your experience in accounting?
Go on for a long time, but we'll keep it short, I guess. So really, numbers have always come easy for me. And I have been doing accounting since, I would say in my, before I was 10, I was doing my dad's books for his business, doing little things, inputting stuff, handwriting things. Back then it was ledgers. But I've been doing it for, forever. My primary experience is I was a CFO for a worldwide company where we had offices overseas, did manufacturing, and sold worldwide. And so I was a CFO for them for over a decade. And I just love accounting and love helping small businesses now that I got out of that realm. And that's where I am today.
Excellent. And I know Jaime's been working at Core Growth Strategies, but she's been a part of our team there. So I want to say over 2 years now.
Almost 3. This year will be 3.
Almost 3. Yeah. So I was going to say about 2.5, going on 3. And she oversees the company. She oversees Core Growth Strategies. She also works with our clients on higher end consulting and accounting reviews over there as well. So I want to unpack in our conversation, because this is an area you've been talking about, for many years, what do you do in accounting? What type of conversations should you have? And I want to dive into what are the most common objectives when a business owner schedules a meeting with their accountant? What are some of their most common objectives that they have? Why are they scheduling it?
Good question. So, most importantly, owners come and need guidance on their financials. First off is just understanding them. A lot of them don't have the right business acumen in order to even realize what a balance sheet does and supports versus a profit and loss statement, your P&L. And so getting guidance along those lines and really dissecting them in depth has been really helpful for a lot of our clients and going through the various details of that. But a lot of time it's coming in and, if they're prepared and we have time, it's going through, strategies around growth, understanding the goals that they've outlined, where they've gotten to with those goals and what steps are needed going forward and how their financials support them on that.
So they're trying, what I'm hearing you say, they're trying to increase their business acumen. So understand what is a profit and loss statement? How do I use it? What's a balance sheet and how do I use it? Mm-hmm. And then they're also wanting some advisement from you. So they're saying, hey, tell me, what are my opportunities? Where do you see problems? How can we grow things? Trying to get some feedback from your perspective on kind of what is the story their numbers are trying to tell them in their business.
Having them learn how to read that story from their financials and working through them with that. And, and pointing out various things, like you said, red flags, throughout their financials. Where they can tighten up, where they can look at their expenses and possibly save money, things along those lines.
And I'm also wondering, because this has been my experience through my journey in accounting and, business consulting, is how many of them actually know what they want to talk about or what they should talk about when they do show up to the meeting?
It's funny you bring that up. So yeah, that's the biggest aspect, is come prepared, like have questions, because a lot of times they come in and just more like, okay, I'm here. They like show up for a call and have not really knowing what to expect, or like, especially on the first go arounds with our clients. Once they get in and have them, then they become more prepared each time. But that first first two times, it's interesting because they are like, okay. And I'm like, okay, well, we can dive in. I can go over some things, but do you have questions I'd like to get, addressed first, things along those lines. And they aren't prepared. They have no idea of what, because a lot of them don't know what they don't know and don't really know what to ask, essentially. So, the first one for sure, but those first meetings are, again, teaching the business acumen around the financials and what and how we could utilize the meetings that fit where the client is at the moment and meeting them there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that our conversation today, because I want to bring us through, how to prepare, what to talk about, all of those things. So like the beginning and end, almost like process for an accountant conversation, like what to talk about. Because I think it's a lot of the, I don't know what I should talk about. I don't know what I should ask. I don't know what I should expect. Mm-hmm. And even in conversations that we've had in the past with business owners, they go, oh, I didn't know I should be talking about those things. I didn't know my accountant should be telling me those kind of things. So I'm really hoping to enlighten all of the people listening to the podcast today on what should you do, what should you expect, and what should this conversation look like. So let's start with the preparation for the meeting. And I know there's preparation that happens on the accountant side. There's preparation that should happen on the client side as well. So what kind of information and documents are prepared by an accountant to go over with a client?
Client and how they want to view their financials, a balance sheet, which goes over their assets and liabilities, a profit and loss statement, or a P&L, sometimes known as an income statement, goes over the income that they've received and all of the COGS and expenses that have gone out to give them, what their net income is for the time period that we're reviewing. We can also have cash flow statements if need be, but those are the primary financials to look at, and having the owner review those ahead of time, at least have an idea of what they look like, right? Mm-hmm. And have them in place. We will have a copy on hand to move forward with the conversation if, when we meet with our clients, but it's being, doing their own homework to look at some things and see if they have questions around that, right? And where they see that there might be an issue, or maybe, to be honest with you, especially at the very beginning, it's generic questions like, I don't understand why, maybe part of my payroll is in COGS and part of my payroll is down in expenses. What does that mean? Right? Like, we love questions because maybe they don't understand what a true cost of goods should be and have included in it. And so mm-hmm. it's going through, and even can be as simple as, questions like that, is really trying to dive into the nitty gritty at the beginning to get their awareness around the financials in full, so that moving forward, every time we have a call, we can get more into the strategy side of the business and how we can move with goals and whatnot. So that was like the initial legwork, I would say, to kind of.
So they need some documents and information, which should be in their profit and loss statement, their balance sheet, maybe a cash flow statement. They also need to prepare. So kind of like, what questions do they have?
What questions?
Is there any sort of, opportunities that you see? Is there a red flag? Like, why is this change or something like that? So they should take some time. I would probably think at least a minimum of 20 minutes.
Yes, minimum.
To review some numbers and go, hey, okay, this is a red flag. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. This looks interesting. Tell me more about that. Or I don't understand this or that. So just coming up with some questions. And I always say, there's no dumb question, right?
We love questions. Absolutely.
Yeah. And making the space to get these questions answered is important. So what are some of the things in order for them to do this? Can a business owner do to keep their financials information, like their financial information, updated or on track throughout the year to get the most out of these meetings? What are some of the things that you would suggest?
Definitely make sure that they close their month every month, the time frame, close the books. And what I mean by closing the books is making sure, all of your bank feed items, all of your expenses, everything is captured, your income, all of that, so that you can balance out, do your bank reconciliations for every bank account, credit card reconciliations, loan reconciliations, and make sure that everything that happened and transpired throughout the month has been put into your software and has been captured, so that when you do print out a P&L and a balance sheet, you've captured everything. So that would be a big step, is making sure all of that is closed and buttoned up for the month. And a lot of times, especially business owners get busy, especially if they're doing the books themselves, and the accounting side usually gets postponed and pushed off, right? And so it's really that taking that extra step if they don't have, an accountant or a bookkeeper taking care of their books for them, making sure that they stay on top of it, because it's when they prolong that, they don't have that clear picture, and they really then aren't making decisions financially for their business based upon financials. That's when they kind of go and look at the bank account and say, oh, I think I can afford this. And then that's when, trouble can happen. So.
Yeah. Bank balance business management. It's, oh, well, what do we have in there? Okay, well, let's do this. So not basing it off of the facts. And so they either need to be working with a professional that is making sure that their financial information is up to date and accurate, or they need to be working it on their own, making sure that they have the time to update it and that it's accurate.
Yes.
And I always suggest, even if a business owner is working on their own books or they have an internal person, to have at least a quarterly review done by a professional, because it really shines the light on what can be improved if things are being updated accurately and accounted for accurately. And one of the big areas that I've seen in the past when they're not prepared for these meetings is, to review this information, is they don't consider what's on the balance sheet and how it can affect their financials and, and what an accountant's going to report on when they're doing a review meeting with them.
Right.
So how long, if somebody's going to set up this, how long should the meeting take? Like, what's a good amount of time to kind of go over, if you have an agenda, what's a good amount of time to sit there and have a conversation with a business owner about the financials?
Usually we schedule between 60 to 90 minutes, depending on how big their business is. And that gives up ample time to really dive into the financials and move through questions that they have. And then as well allows time for reviewing of goals, keeping them accountable. Are they moving forward? Does things need to be changed? And it's nice having those meetings, because having a business owner have some sort of accountability to someone is really helpful. And we always ask where your goals are. How are you doing? And having them actually respond back to really take a look to say, yeah, my sales are not where I need to be. Okay, well, what changes can we make? Where do you see? Things like that, so that they can be addressed sooner in the year rather than looking at the end of the year and nothing has changed and the goal wasn't hit and set. So being able to have that accountability has really been helpful for our clients.
So making the time and being intentional with, hey, this is how my business is performing. This is the money we're making. This is what it's costing us. And even looking at, like, how profitable are we, or what are we spending in different areas? And how is that impacting our business? Is there changes that need to be made?
And it's interesting, because a lot of the times that we find, and we usually do a comparison to the previous year as well. And as just business owners are growing, they're moving, they're, doing their business. It's when we look at these and really dive in and say, okay, well, you're equal to or maybe slightly above your revenue that the same time last year as you are this year. Yet when you look at the expenses throughout your business, one of the things that we see more often than not is they're having the same amount of revenue, delivering the same amount of services, but they have more payroll. So now, but the growth has been so slow that an owner's perspective, without looking at that, like on a regular basis, they don't feel it at the time. They think that they're fine because they think they're doing more revenue. And in reality, it's like, no, hold the phone. This is where we take a look. And so it's pulling them out of the weeds if they're into too much, and just pulling them out of the grind of growing a business, to take the time and actually having someone from an outside perspective take an overview of the books and really pointing out things that they might not see if they looked at them themselves. Making sure, other things. Marketing is another huge drainer on financials, where you spend a lot of money, and it's, most owners don't track their ROI, or return on an investment, from that standpoint, to know if their really marketing is doing them any good. And so again, watching those revenue levels, if you're doing some sort of campaign, and making sure that being tracked to see if it needs to be adjusted too. So it's interesting in a lot of these meetings what comes up. So
yeah, and it sounds like some of the things that gets talked about, it's providing more information to the business owner to where they can make decisions off of facts. And I know for several years there's been kind of this conversation where we're discovering well, why did you do that? Or what's the drive behind that? And they're like, well, my gut tells me, my gut told me, my gut. And what I have found is, and I'm not against, gut instincts, right? It's like they've been a part of us since the beginning of evolution, to where it's like, they're part of who we are as human beings. And, it's that fight or flight, right? That the gut instinct kicks in. And I think that's great. But if we're not completely aware of our environment, then the gut is just going to work off of assumptions, versus what's really there and what are facts. So diving in a little bit deeper and seeing, what are my numbers? Are there things that are costing us too much? It's giving a business owner the information that they need to really react and trust that gut instinct, versus it just being emotional and full of assumption.
And sure, it tightens that up so that gut does focus, like you mentioned, on those facts, and they have a full understanding. And once they understand really how to read a P&L and balance sheet, it's amazing how much that they're able to capture from that. Because at that point they realize and can look at the and read, and basically read the story, so that they know, man, I didn't think I spent this much on a particular item or a particular, thing. It's like, wait a second, why is this number high? Oh, that's right, we did have that other expense. Oh, I had forgotten. I hear that a lot. Oh, I had forgotten we did spend that money. So
right.
Like you said, those gut instincts are only working on partials because you're busy. An owner is busy. Let's be honest. And that's why you have an accounting system or an accountant that captures all these expenses so that you don't have to remember them,
So the meeting should take about 60 to 90 minutes, depending on the size of the business. And I'm also suspecting, depending on the period end. So
Correct.
is it a monthly, a quarterly, or an annual? So that's also going to impact the length of the meeting. Mm-hmm. And some of the things that should be done from a standard meeting to more of an advanced deep dive is reviewing the financial reports, talking about change, what's changed and why, answering questions, and gaining insight at a deeper level on maybe, an increase in profit or a decrease, in profit, if there's a higher spend on something, something that's a big difference from the prior period.
Right.
And then also talking about some strategies and goals, and then, really outlining what are you going to do? What are your action items, or some of the things that they might take away?
Bringing that clarity and understanding of their financials to them in full. And then, how can they use them to make the next period, whether it's a month, a quarter, be that much better based upon the data that we've gone over and what needs to change.
Yeah, and I can really think of, especially working with lawn care and landscapes, and in that industry, and with in the trade industry too. We have some clients that are focused on just a specific trade that's very similar to the business model, where they're gaining this insight and they're looking at how their business functions throughout the year, and they're identifying seasonal anomalies that happen in their business financials. And then they've made decisions to where they could go, oh, this is always a slow season for us, which is why we end up in this cash crunch for this period of time. What can we do so it's not so painful or pinchy when we're going through this season? And I know from experience that these conversations and these meetings have opened up the opportunity to create solutions in the business to where it relieves those pain points in seasonal businesses, or where they have this flux that happens with cash flow and delivery.
Being able to see those trends, right? To understand. Yeah. Again, it's learning and reading the story of your business, because it's telling you. It's just learning the language.
So I want to kind of dive into, go like a little bit of a different direction on, with clients, or people that work with accountants. Okay. What are some common like concerns or misconceptions that you have found that come up when they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to work with this accountant, and these are my concerns, or these are the things that I think they should do?
It's funny you bring that up. So, I think a lot of like myths around that is an accountant is also your CPA and does taxes, which could be, depending on if, they have the background and the, the pedigree for it. It's interesting because, there's checks and balances, and I was like, there's bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, and then you have a CPA that does taxes, and some taxes do accounting as well. But I like to have that separation of duties where you don't have an accountant also do your taxes, because no one else sees your books at that point, right? And so it's just like we are reviewing the books of the owners, it's having someone else tell that story to you and making sure they're reading it the same way we are, and then seeing the same numbers and concerns, or congratulations should be given because, they're doing amazing. Yeah. And so it's having that, we offer more than just tax services, like if the CPA is involved, but it's, we can really help with the strategic advisory of the business, working with those long-term goals, working to say, okay, well, if, you've cut your expenses, what else needs to take place? A lot of that's maybe efficiency within your team, right? And looking through more really finite details, working through pricing, break-even points, a lot of things that go on behind the scenes to really help grow a business can be worked through with an accountant if you have one that you work with.
And those are, kind of guided as well by client questions, like from my experience, to where they go, hey, something's wrong here, or, am I missing something? That's usually how the conversation starts. And, we end up going down this rabbit hole to where we look at, well, what are your pricing? Like, what's your pricing model? Okay, let's look at the difference. Like, are you pricing properly? And that's a typical bleed that we find in this industry, is that they don't have the right markups set for the services or even the materials or equipment that they're providing, or considering that in their pricing. And it's kind of like this blind spot that occurs to where it's not, they're basically bleeding profit, and they're like, I don't know why I'm not making any money. Like, what's going on here? So, and I,
sorry, keep going.
Oh, and I was going to say, and I think part of the assumption is that an accountant or CPA should just tell them that, like, come right out and tell them, like, hey, I think you're bleeding profit and this is where it is. The problem with that is if the conversation isn't initiated, or, it's not extremely obvious, or there's not concerns being brought up, then the conversation just may not happen.
Right. Like, we can strategize around, well, again, diving in. How are you doing it? What is your process? A lot of times too, what we find, like you said, is where they're doing services, but they're not charging for it. They're including it.
Yeah.
And so it's like you can add a charge to that, and all of that hits your bottom line usually, because it's something that you're doing already, but just add an extra charge for it, And so it's looking at little things here and there, and finding those that could really help. I know we did that with one of our clients this year, this past year and a half, you and I've been working with. And it's like, the inspections that you're doing, like, add a fee for that. And hands down, that made a huge difference in his bottom line. And something he didn't even think about. It was just giving it away for free.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know who you're talking about, and the services and the report that this business was providing to their potential customer was so valuable.
Yes.
And he was just giving it away for free. And then, they would give it to somebody else who would go do the work, but then they would also be disappointed because the work wasn't done at the level that the report outlined, So yeah, it could definitely create some situations. So I know that's one common misconception is, like, your accountant is just going to tell you,
yes,
hey, I see this or I see that. Or I almost feel like in some ways there's this idea that accountants have this, like, psychic ability to just know what's going on in the operations of the business that's being reflected on the financials. But unless it's really talked about by the business owner and those challenges are shared and there's this level of vulnerability, we really can't advise on the best practices associated with their challenges.
I'm glad you hit on it. It's the business owner truly does have to be, a lot of people don't like the word vulnerable, but it's like you have to be honest and have that honest conversation. We're not here to judge. We're here to help. And if we don't talk about the elephant that's stomping the business to a pulp, we can't address the elephant that's stomping the business to a pulp, right? You have to admit that there's an elephant, and let's talk about the elephant. And so it's being vulnerable, being open. Like I mentioned, it's like, okay, your cells, where are your cells? Oh, well, why haven't you hit your cells? Because we're going to ask hard questions, but it's not in a judge mindset. It's really just trying to take that, the deeper step. Why is this happening? Well, why is that happening? Really to try and find the problem so that the solution can be, worked out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And are there any questions that maybe they're missing? Like, what are they not asking that could benefit them? Like, for somebody listening, maybe they're not asking a question. Are there any questions that you can kind of throw out there that could help somebody, that they could ask their accountant when they're, either in a review meeting, or maybe they're not doing review meetings yet? So maybe one of the questions might be like, hey, can we have a review meeting of the financials and talk about this thing? Like, what are some other questions that a business owner could ask that could benefit them?
Yeah. Well, again, we love questions because that means the business owner's engaged. And really starting to look at things. And it's just understanding, any questions that you need to understand the financials better, the why behind certain things. Why is this so high? That's the biggest one I get. Well, why is this particular line item on my P&L so high? Right? Well, let's dive into that. Let's find out. And so, things like that, so that they have a true understanding of what the numbers represent. But it's more in going into, how can I save? What changes can I make? How can I better prepare for the next period? And so it's diving into the things that, again, that's part of the strategy in the sessions that we can provide and should be talked to with an accountant, because they can look at that trend and help you identify, right? And how, okay, well, it's the beginning of the year. Oh, we just finished January. So, okay, let's move forward. And, your slow season is going to hit, 10 months from now, or maybe it's 6 months from now, whatever may be the case. So what planning can we do for that? But without us asking about certain trends, or maybe that's not a topic that the owner wants to go by, they have to bring that up. Like, that's that engagement that we're looking for. Those questions, be prepared. Again, do your homework. There's never a dumb question.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm hearing you say, be curious.
Be curious. Yes.
Yeah. And if you see something that seems off to you, ask about it. Mm-hmm. Ask them to maybe explain it to you, or dive deeper in, or go, what can I do to improve this? Or what do you see the problem is here? Mm-hmm. So ask questions like that maybe they typically wouldn't ask.
Exactly.
Core Growth Strategies provides business growth management solutions through cloud accounting, bookkeeping, and strategic business consulting programs. Our team works with small businesses in lawn care and landscape and trade industries throughout the U.S. We increase our clients' business acumen by creating business performance transparency through financials and strategic advisement based on industry best practices and benchmarks. Our experienced team provides support, guidance, and coaching, thereby allowing our clients to connect with viable data and discover their own solutions. Core Growth Strategies programs and services are designed to get your business from where it is now to where you have always dreamed it to be. Visit us today at coregrowthstrategies.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't miss our exclusive limited time podcast special. Just mention promo code GPA Pro to any member of our team during your complimentary consultation, or enter the promo code on our site when you sign up for one of our online programs. That's promo code GPA Pro. All right, so they have to prepare for a meeting. They then show up for the meeting. There's this conversation that happens. Hopefully there's some questions that are asked. So, some strategies that are gone over. What does a post meeting look like? So after they've had the meeting, what are some of the things? I know I've looked at it from like, oh my goodness, I hope this happens. Like, what are some of the things that a business owner can do after meeting with their accountant?
Follow through. What is that? Follow through. It's, of the things that we talk about, right? The owner's going to usually leave with either a to-do list, things that they have to look into, maybe additional questions that they might have to ask their team, or if something needs to change, like why is something internally. Follow through, take action immediately. Don't wait, because what happens is these things have already occurred during whatever time frame that has occurred. Maybe it's a month, or maybe it's a quarter, right? Mm-hmm. So these things have taken place. We've identified them in the meeting. In order to get them changed before we meet again, if it's another quarter, it's like action immediately. And then that way the effects of those changes can start to take place, so that when we meet again, we can see, did those changes work? What, and readjust, right? If
right.
need be. So don't delay. You're missing out on opportunities if they procrastinate.
Yeah. And I want to kind of unpack a little bit on this follow through, because I'm very familiar with, the entrepreneurial spirit. And I myself am one of those, to where we can go, 150 miles a minute, or I always like to say, faster than light speed. We have a million coals on the fire. We're rarely focused on one thing at one time. And I know it takes a lot of work to move from, that crazy kind of tornado business management to more of this intentional focus. And one of the things that I've learned over time is it's great to have a wish list of things to do. And in every business as it grows, you're always going to have this 100-point checklist of like things that we need to get done and implement and change. And, it just goes on forever. And there's like this, you're never there, kind of drive and narrative that we create. And I would say that the most I've ever gotten done is when I focus on the top most important 3 things that are going to have the biggest impact. So that's something that I think is very important, is because it always goes, the human mind is 1, 2, 3, many. And then we're trying to run with many, and I always picture, like when kids pick up all these toys and they run across the floor, and then there's just, you drop this and that and this, and they end up on the other side and they've only got a couple things in their hands. That's how I feel like an entrepreneur functions. So really being focused with actions and objectives when you walk away is important, and not 100.
No,
just a few.
Yes. And it's being brave and bold to take ownership of those action items and follow through with them, because a lot of times some of these owners, it's out of their realm, it's out of their comfort zone. And so like you mentioned, like if they don't make that top 3 action item list, they'll do other things that are important to the business, but not on the business for the business to move forward. And so it's keeping that focus. Out of comfort zone or not out of comfort zone, these have to be addressed, and being willing to take the time, don't make it, take it to do those action items and get them completed. It makes a huge difference. I stress that over and over. All of our clients, you have to do the homework. You have to do the work. We can advise, we can help, support, guide, but if you don't take the steps and do the work, you're not going to get there. And some owners struggle with that. And it's just, we can work through that. And if we have to limit it down to 1, just be open and honest in that conversation and say, I know myself, I know we need to address these, but I know me, I just need to do the top 1. What is that? Great. Let's focus on that 1 first,
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes me think about, we have this assessment that clients can take, and it identifies where the business is in its stage of growth based off of what it has set up and built in a business. And it looks at, different areas of the business as well. And when I was, pulling this assessment together and ironing out some of the wrinkles and the questions and things like that to identify, as they move through these stages, it made me think that the entrepreneur moves through these stages too. Like the business is a very clear reflection of what stage the entrepreneur is in as an entrepreneur. And these 3 levels are infancy, adolescent, and maturity. And I look back at myself as an entrepreneur, and I remember, and there's some stages, I will admit, there's some different areas where I am absolutely still in an adolescent stage. And there are some where I'm like, oh my gosh, I made it to this maturity stage. This is amazing. Like, how did this happen? So I think the business and what the business owner as the entrepreneur focuses on can really define like what stage of growth are you in as an entrepreneur. And I feel that it's a process, right? To move through from infancy to adolescent to maturity, and being intentional and not trying to do those 100 things. That's kind of an adolescent thing. Like when you're doing 100 things, picking the top 3 things is more of that maturity stage and going, oh, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to be responsive. I'm going to make the time, because as an adult, right, we make the time to pay our rent. We make the time to pay our mortgage. We make the time, for those types of things. So it's like making the time for your business and having these conversations really defines like what stage are we at, and if we're not at the stage we want to be, how do we get there?
Right. Once you move through that, it's maintaining that relationship, having those meetings again, even if you failed the first go around, right? because you need to have that accountability. And so keeping, that constant, having those constant meetings on whatever schedule you want them on holds you accountable for that. And even if you fail, that's okay. A lot of business owners, it's interesting. It's like they feel like they're the only ones that have ever been in this particular situation. We all go through that. Like, it's like, whatever the pressure point might be. And as a business owner, you're sometimes just in this little solo, this silo chamber by yourself. But it's like, believe me, you're not the first person to go through this. You're not the last person to go through it. You are not alone. Don't feel bad. Let's just figure it out and move forward from there. But it's just holding that accountability and being able to go back to those meetings and saying, yes, I did only one of the three things and I didn't on the others. Okay, that's fine. Let's see what changes happen and let's move forward with it, right? It's okay. Mm-hmm. And the more the owner shows up, the more the owner stays engaged and does the work. It is astounding to see and watch our clients grow versus those that focus on those 100 things like you mentioned, right?
Right.
And choose to not want to be accountable for that. It really, there is a significant difference when you look at a larger picture and put it in the same melting pot.
Yeah. And it is very true that as business owners, it does feel like a very lonely place.
It does.
And, that we're in this silo and this pressure cooker. But the reality is it's like, we're all in it together. It's just kind of like, who are we inviting to the table to have these conversations with? And how often are we having these conversations? And that really changes the perspective of, okay, I'm not alone. I can find my way out of this silo that I've built up around myself, and change can happen. These things that seem so difficult can be easy. It doesn't always have to be hard.
Right.
So what are some of the things that someone can do to maintain an effective relationship with their accountant? What would you suggest that they do?
Check-ins. Maintain whatever schedule that is. Keep your finances on track. Like I'd mentioned, close out the months on a timely basis. Don't prolong those and keep pushing those aside. Whether if you're doing it as a business owner solely yourself, take the time to get them updated. It really won't take that long, but you'll feel better because you'll have a cleaner picture. And you'll be able to see, the various stages of your business, like you had mentioned before, what that story is trying to tell you.
So don't postpone things. Don't put off the meeting. Make sure you're having regular meetings. I would say a minimum of quarterly meetings.
Yep, I agree.
If there being more intention, maybe meet monthly.
Yep. And a lot of times too, especially when they first start, at least with our clients, it's like they want to meet monthly because it's like, I've got questions. I want to learn. I want to understand more. And then as they progress, they can go to quarterly. Then I've had quarterly that come back to doing monthly again because maybe they've grown their business to a point and it's like, whoa, wait a second. I need guidance on this. Let's talk about this. Can we switch from quarterly back down to monthly? Absolutely. It's just, again, meeting our clients where they need to be and really keeping them informed of their business. They're staying on it and seeing the trends that it's showing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that because it's, businesses they're fluid, right? It's like this forever changing to where you can hit a plateau for a while and then how do we get out of it? Or we have this rapid growth or suddenly things have slowed down, and being able to have somebody to talk to about those things, because all of those things are extremely stressful, I think is important. And having a relationship, it's harder to find somebody to have those conversations with if you don't have a relationship already. It's going to happen. It's just, again, it's a matter of when, and when are you going to need that kind of support? So I think it's highly beneficial to already have that support. It's like having a therapist or, a pastor or somebody that you talk to or you need to talk to, making sure you already have a relationship built so they're there when you need them. And, getting that lifeline, like you have that lifeline in your hand, is very important.
Yes. And, we had a client who we'd been working with almost, I don't know, maybe about 9 months, and had an opportunity with the growth that he'd seen with the various, tools. And he signed up for a couple of our coaching sessions, but where he's like, I have an opportunity. I don't know if I can afford it. Should I take it? Like, we had these calls, and he was so grateful, like you mentioned, had that support, because otherwise he may have missed out on doing an acquisition of another company that he wasn't even on his radar, but it came available. And it's like, can we have a sit down and let's talk about that? Absolutely. Let's look at this. Let's dive in. Let's pull financials. Is it a good buy? I don't know. Let's review it. And we gave him some homework. He did it. We brought it in, analyzed it. And yeah, he was able to take hold of that opportunity and doubled his business with just that acquisition alone. So
yeah.
It's having
and I've had that experience too in the past, working with some of our clients. Is they've reached out to me saying, hey, suddenly this came up, like even buying a property, right? This came up. Where do I get the money? Like, everything inside and out, like, where do we get the money for this? And what's the best way? Like, even if we have the money there, what would you suggest, how we acquire this? What are our options here? And just kind of being that person to talk it through with, and in a way, like us being their devil's advocate and also their biggest fan is, what's the best way? Yeah. And, what is the best way? And, how can we best support them? And I would say I've been able to give the best advisement because of the longevity of that relationship and how much, of a partnership that has been established and built over time, to where we know the business inside and out and can properly advise. I think that's something else that's very valuable in building a relationship with an accountant who you work that close with.
And I love that, because, even here at Core, like, we've structured our accounting plans it's a partnership plan. It's our accounting partnership plan. Like, we're not here just to turn over numbers for you. Like, we're in it with you. We're partnering up with you on that, right? Like you'd mentioned, we're in this for the long term, and we're here to support you. And it doesn't have to be good things too. Like, we have a client that's looking to do our services, but has an issue with an IRS. And he's like, oh my gosh, I need help. I need advice. How can I do this? And we're, helping guide into the right people to speak with who can advise him better on the specific topics that he needs, and then working through his financials to get him up to where they need to be. So I don't want owners thinking, well, I don't have anything but, good things to talk about. I'm kind of in a rut. No, we can help on all of that. Just start the establishment now with an accountant or someone that you trust to work with to have these conversations, because it's knowing, like, if you're not alone. This can be worked through, and we can move forward with the business. And it's just, even if it's that, simple as that, but just to guide a little bit of guidance.
So if you could give our listeners today some advice on how they can maximize their meetings with their accountants, what would you tell them?
Oh, I love this. So, like you'd mentioned, I love the word you use, be curious, right? So look at your financials, be prepared, look at the data, and come with questions. A lot of the clients we work with, we love the goal-oriented mindset, that learner mindset we always talk about as well. It's like, and be ready to take notes and to take action to follow through with. And if they can come with those little steps, right? And I know that I say little, but in reality, when you have to do them, they're a lot. Their growth and how they build their company will start to see results by doing so. But it's them just, again, engaging and wanting to move forward with it. So be curious, come with questions, start to understand your data, and really just ask questions around everything you don't. Learn the story that the company is trying to, to tell you through the financials, and then follow through on action items. And if they do that more regularly than not, that they'll see the results that they're looking for.
And then I want to kind of, hearing you talk, I'm thinking about, oh my goodness, what if somebody isn't currently working with an accountant, but all the stuff you're saying is, they're like, oh, I want that. That sounds amazing. Or maybe they're working with somebody that either doesn't do this or they're not getting this from. What are some of the steps that they can take to work with somebody that can provide these insights for them, or even them getting these insights from their current person?
Yeah, I would say, always the best place to start is like people Do you have other business owners that you're friends with who might have someone who does their books currently? Find, multiple sources, 2 to 3, call around. You can definitely obviously look online. You can always come to Core and we would love to talk to you. But it's just reaching out to those, even when we get new clients, we have our own clients that if anyone would love to do a referral. We've had clients who are like, well, we're debating between you and this. I'm like, perfect. Would you like to speak to one of our or two of our clients currently as a reference source? And we have clients that are willing to do that. And so, do that from other accountants or CPAs that you're reaching out to. Don't hesitate to ask for that, because I think that's really important. And then lastly, it's like, know what you're looking for and what you want that relationship to be, right? Even when we do referrals for CPAs to our clients, it's like, meet with them, because not every accountant is going to speak the language you want them to speak to you, right? And so it's knowing what you want from your business, how you want your accountant to help you, and being able to work with that person, because again, everyone's different. Not everyone works best with you. So
Yeah.
Those would be I would think the top few that I would say.
Yeah. And I love that, because I've had conversations, with clients or leads, I should say. And they said, how do I know that I should work with you? Whether it's an accounting client or coaching client or something like that. And I tell them, well, what do you need and want?
Right.
Am I somebody that you feel like you can connect with, that can support you or even hold you accountable? Do our personalities in some way match to a degree, or our values, right? And is the services I'm providing, does it cover all the bases of what you need? So I think that's very important when you're choosing to work with a professional for your business. And it doesn't matter if it's an advisor, a consultant, a coach, an accountant, making sure that your values align, making sure that the services they provide align with what you need and want. Mm-hmm. And also, I think, are they clear on what they provide? So that's something else that I think is important, because not every business professional, no matter what industry you're in there, they're just not the same. One CPA is not the same of another. One accountant's not the same of another. So I always say, we may not be for you, and really, if someone is not for you, guess what? You're not for them. And that's okay, because we just need to find our flock. Like, who is it that we need to work with that's going to get us there?
Even like the clients that we don't work with, it's like, we don't feel like we're the right fit for you, but here's a couple other options for you, right? Because we don't want you not to have anybody by any stretch. So
right.
Don't be afraid to ask for those referrals, even from the accountants or CPAs you might be wanting to interview, if they're not the right
fit. Yeah, because we might know someone who's a good fit. Like, the person that you're talking with may not be a good fit, but they might know someone who's a good fit, and they already refer, customers back and forth, to the other professional. And we do that. We have strategic partners with businesses. We don't want to leave somebody hanging. Like, we're, invested and concerned about their well-being, what they're looking for. And we always, like to at least refer them to somebody that we know they don't do everything the way we do them, but we know that they're in good hands, and they would be a good fit for them. And I would say the last thing too is follow through. right? If you're really seriously looking at making the change, and this is where I see so many entrepreneurs like through our coaching program, where I'm like, well, this has been a pain point for you. You did all this legwork. Where did you end up? Oh, we just, we're just going to stay right where we're at or something like that, which could be the decision, right? That you realized you already have what you need. But the failure to take action once you've done all this legwork and kind of close it up with certainty is very important.
It's just like anything else. If you don't move forward with it, excuse me, if you don't move forward with it, you're not going to continue to grow or make any changes that you might need to do. And it's just taking action on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the most important piece, whether it's moving to a new accountant or even following through to set up regular scheduled calls with your current accountant, follow through and definitely get that done. And you'll be in a better place next year than you are right now. I can guarantee that.
Exactly.
So Jaime, if somebody is interested in connecting with you, what's the best way to do that?
Connect with me directly. You can send an email to profitmore@coregrowthstrategies.com. And that will come into our sales department, and we can start working and getting an appointment consultation with you and doing kind of a dive into any concerns or questions that you might have around your financials. And we'd be happy to take a peek and learn more about your business and how we can help and work through the various pain points that they might be experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And I asked this question as well. What could they expect if they reach out to you? Like, what does this look like when you have somebody new who wants to know about the services that Core provides?
Yeah. So the initial is getting a consultation call set up. And from there, it's working with you. We have a Zoom call where we kind of go over things that you're looking for, how, what you're looking to have help on, where your pain points are. And that might be accounting, or it could be if you're interested in our Profit First, various different coaching aspects, or goals oriented. We have, again, coaching around all of that. And then from there, we will like to take, depending on what the services are, if they're accounting related, we like to take a peek under the hood, we like to call it, where we look at their QuickBooks Online and kind of see where they're at. And if we see red flags, any sort of cleanup that might need to take place, we want to make sure that their books are up to what we call GAAP standards, which is the general accounting practices for the accounting world. And then we can get an engagement and have another call and walk through the services that we can provide and help them grow based upon the needs that they're looking for.
Excellent. Well, I will also include the website and the consultation link that you provided. I know on the website there are plenty of free resources as well that any listeners can access. And I want to thank you for your time today, walking us through what someone should expect from meeting with their accountant.
No, it was very exciting. Thank you for having me. And I'm excited for these guys to hopefully, take action.
Great. So thank you to our listeners for tuning into today's episode. I hope that you found the discussion insightful and have a clear understanding on how to effectively work with your accountant moving forward. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast,
the show that digs into the challenges of growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit.